Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this Tinbite Isaias, the prophecy of Isaiah, Mi'raf, Hamsa, Shost, isn't chapter 53 of Isaiah, the suffering Messiah, isn't that the very same place that the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts of the Apostle was reading? Now, this is very important for us to understand more about the two messiahs. The two messiahs. Now, a lot of Christians taught Greek mythology in place of true Moshiyach Timherit, instead of true messianic teaching. Believe as they believe, basically according to Greek mythology. But now here in Acts of the Apostle, Hawariyat Shara Raf Cement Kutera Haya Sidista is Kamecheresha. The rest it says Yegeta Melak Philippe Olsen Teneshte Bede Buba Bekula Ka Jerusalem Woda Gaza Woda Miya Wordo Midrebeda Woda Hone Menged Heed Allah Teneshtom Hede Innehom Hindeke Yetebalech Ethiopia Nigishta Azajna Jandaraba Yenebre Be Genzebwam Hulu Yeshaletene and Ethiopia so Lia Seged Woda Jerusalem Metetoneber Sia Melesim Be Saregala Tekemt O Ye Nebiyun Ye Isayasin Methafa Yaneber Neber. He was reading the prophet Isaiah. It says he was reading the prophet Isaiah, the treasurer and the eunuch of the queen of Ethiopia, of the Candace or Hindeke Negisht, of the Ethiopia Negisht. He was reading, it says, Ye Nebiyun Ye Isayasin Hametzahafa Yaneb Neber, that he was reading Isaiah. It says, Menfesim of Philippe Olsen. Now the Spirit, you understand, said to Philippe Os, what is he? Saregala Krebna Tegenany Allah. Told him to draw near and to basically meet this chariot, to meet the chariot, draw near and to meet the chariot. Philippe Osim wrote, Philippos, the apostle Philip, he ran, Ye Nebiyun Ye Isaias in the Metafa Siyaneba Semana Be'unu Yemita Neba Wina Tasa Tawalewalehin Alo. He said, do you understand, in truth, do you understand what you're reading? Now the Ethiopian eunuch, Arisumai, he said, Yemi meranya sainor yende ti chalenyal how ende you chalenyal. How am I to know without someone to guide me? Right? And Allah, it says what toma ka arsugari emet azena Philippos sena lemeno. So he begged that the apostle Philippos should sit with him in his chariot. He asked him that he should sit with him, and he beseeched him, in other words, lemeno, that he would sit with him in his chariot. And this was the area that the Ethiopian eunuch was reading. This is the area that the Ethiopian eunuch was reading. In the bega wode metareda teneda ye begat ebotima be shalachu afita zim in the meal indihu afun ala kafetem bewurde tu fardua tewagade hiwa tu kamidara tewagdalechna tewalidun nisa manina garal. Manyanagaral, and his generation till Lidunis Manyanagaral. Who will tell of his generation? Now, this is the very same suffering Messiah theme. Now, what's very interesting is that we know, and if you don't know, you should know that this Ethiopian treasurer and eunuch was a Hebrew. I mean, it's very clear from the text that he was a Hebrew, because it says in this text that it says in verse Kuterahaya Sabat, it says in Nehum Hindike Yetabalech Ethiopia Nigish Dazajna Janderebaya Nebere Begenza Buam Hulu Yeshalet and Ethiopia. So Li Seged to worship Li Seged what it Jerusalem Neber. He had come to Jerusalem. He had come to Jerusalem. Li Seged. He had come to Jerusalem to worship. Now, at this particular time in the first century AD, just like today, when say Muslims or go to Mecca, or Catholics may go to the Vatican, Rome, or others will go to other places, pilgrimage. They will go on their pilgrimage. And this was the custom of the Hebrews after the Assyrian captivity and exile of Israel, and after the Babylonian captivity of Judah, and with the scattered Israelites that were scattered. You understand Jezreel, the Jezreel prophecy, Yisrael, that was scattered throughout that region of the world and throughout the world. And so this particular Ethiopian was not just so-called the Ethiopian eunuch, but it's clear that he was a Hebrew, because as the text goes further, it shows us very explicitly. It says, "Si melesima besaragalatek emto yenabiyun ye Isayasin ametzahafiyan neber." That he was, while he was returning, he sitting in his chariot. He was reading the book of the prophet Esaias, that he read the book of the prophet Esaias. And what's very interesting is that it tells us the exact area that he was reading, and this is Isaiah chapter Mi'raf Hamsa Shost, or chapter 53, that's known as the suffering Messiah text, the suffering servant, the suffering Messiah text. Now, I wanted to touch on this first before even getting into Messiah ben Yosef and Messiah ben Dawid, or ben Dawid. Before we get into that, we needed to touch on the text. Needed to really touch on the text to better understand the text, so we can interpret this in context. Because this whole theme of the Messiah ben Yosef or Joseph and the Messiah ben David or David is something that's discussed heavily in so-called Judaism, or among the Jews who say they are Jews. They discuss this theme, and they have created their own interpretations that suit their political Zionist agenda, so forth and so on, from that particular text. But now what they have reminded many of us of is the other strata and level of interpretation, and as well through the Memphis Kadus, the application to Rastafari and to the prophecy concerning the King of Kings and Rastafari and Ethiopia in these end times. And we Ethiopian Hebrews, we once lost but now found, Beta Israel. And this is what's very important, because so far what we've been doing in this series is calling this the Christ and His Kingly Character Groundation, and the Messiah series is touching on what does Messiah and Christ really mean, based on the scriptures and based on the Bible, not getting into all the denominational interpretations here and there. We also touched on the similarities, the matrix between Messiah and Savior in the Hebrew, or the whole Moshiyach and the Mashiach theme within the scriptures. You understand, within the language of the Hebrew. You understand how these two words, Savior and Christ in the Hebrew, or Moshiyach, how they're very close and very similar. You understand, in their Hebrew pronunciations, biblical Hebrew pronunciations, and in their usage and meanings. You understand, in other words, where the theme of the Messiah, Yehoshua, becomes also the Savior, Yehoshua, but even in Yehoshua or Yeshua's name is that root, Yasha, you understand, which means Savior. You understand? And then another cognate of it is Shoah, and we know Shoah is the province of the remnant